If you ask a company, hey, tell me how you guys estimate here. Like, have you ever had a project where a developer estimated something that was really important in the company, but then as they were working on it, they found out it was going to take like 4 times longer? Tell me how that went. What happened? How did people deal with that? If they look at you like, oh my God, well, that tells you all you need to know. Have you ever had a gut feeling that the company you're about to work for in tech is probably not a good one, but you kind of ignore all the signs because there's so much money, or maybe it's a title that you've always wanted? Well, today I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things I've learned over my career that might help you not fall into the trap of taking a really bad job because of the allure of maybe the money or the title or the prestige. And hopefully that will help you not get into a situation where you land the job, but now you get to spend the next year or two faking your way through enthusiasm at a company that really sucks. Let me tell you a little story just to set the stage here of when this happened to me. About 9 years ago, I was working for a software consulting agency. I'd been there for 10 years, and I'd really overstayed my welcome. I wanted to leave several years before, and I was really into continuous delivery at the time. It was still somewhat new in the industry. It was maybe about 5 years old at that time. And my company that I worked for, I was doing that kind of work for clients, but they weren't really interested in growing it. And I wanted to do more of it, and I wanted to grow. And so I decided that it was time to look for another job. Well, I didn't even actively start looking, and suddenly this one company reached out to me, this person who was very well known in the community of the language, the programming language that I knew at the time. And they just hit me up and said, hey, we're really interested in you, and I'd like to have a conversation. So I said, sure. So I met them at a Thai food restaurant here in Austin, and we sat down, and remember, I knew nothing about this person, and they just started telling me all these things about how much they loved my work, and they loved the things I had to say about continuous delivery. Now, I had a blog at the time. It's actually what my website was, and it started in 2008, but I had a blog, and I talked a little bit about some of the things I was doing for consultants, but I was really surprised and a little weirded out that this person seemed to know a lot more about me than I even felt like I had shared publicly. And everything that I said to them about what I was interested in doing, because I wanted to set really clear expectations and make sure that I didn't basically hide anything with what I wanted. I already had a job, so there was really no reason for me to leave. So I was totally upfront. Hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for this. I'm not interested in this, but I am interested in this. And this person agreed with me with everything. And so I was feeling really good about it. And I went home, talked to my wife about it, shared what had happened. She was kind of excited. I was kind of excited. She was sick of hearing me bitch for all these years. And then a couple days later, they asked me to meet the team, basically. And they took me out to this really expensive restaurant here in Austin, got me some food that was delicious. And, their HR people were there, and their head architect, and all these people. And they're all saying these things to me about how excited they are that I'm about to join. And I took a tech interview screening in that one, which I hate doing those. I generally try to avoid those, but that went fine. It was like just a couple coding questions that were not difficult at all. But basically, then they gave me an offer. And so, I'm all excited. I'm like, finally, I get to leave this company I've been at for 10 years. I liked the company, but I was sick of it. I was ready to move on. I got this new offer. This offer was for significantly more than what I was making. Oh, I forgot to mention, too, when I met the leadership team, it was really him and then like sort of the co-founder of this company. And they both were like, oh, we're really excited about having you come in and if you want to have any people report to you. And I was like, well, typically I don't, directly manage people, but I'm happy to lead and things like that. So anyway, this was like, it sounded like the dream job. I was really excited about it. So I start the job, and on the first day, I meet the COO, who's like the person who's in charge of operations. And they basically tell me, oh, yeah, we don't really need that job we hired you for anymore. We need you to do this other thing. And it was a complete bait and switch. It was totally nothing like the job that they had sold me on. And I told this person this, I said, hey, well, I met with, the person I went out to lunch with twice, and I met with the COO, and this is what they were telling me, and this is what was in my offer letter. And he was like, hey, I understand that. I'll have to figure out what went wrong there in the communication. That really pisses me off. We shouldn't be bringing people in, that we're setting bad expectations with. But this is what I need your help with. This is what I need you to do. And so I went out to my car, and I was so pissed and frustrated. I just started slamming my fists on the steering wheel and just yelling, fuck, over and over again. Not my best moment. But, also we needed the health insurance. We had some personal stuff going on in the family. So I ended up getting kind of trapped into this company for about 5 months. And I'll tell in the future a whole story about what happened there that actually got me out of it. But needless to say, there were a lot of things I ignored during the interview process, and I don't know if you call it the courting process, the process of just talking to people there and getting to know them. And so in this video today, I want to share with you some of the things I learned, not just from that experience, but from many times of working with many companies. I think you know my background by now, and hopefully that'll help you out so that you don't get stuck falling for the same thing. So first, let's talk about what are some red flags that the company you're about to join is toxic, that you're going to join, and maybe they're not going to bait and switch you like they did with me, but they're going to have really big problems that probably with work-life balance and the management and narcissism and things like that. Well, the first thing is I think they can be really vague when you ask them questions about work-life balance. If you get into an interview or you're talking to a recruiter or you're talking to the hiring manager or the executive team or anybody at a company, and you're asking, well, how many hours are we expected to work here? And they say things like, well, we don't really have set work hours here. We just think, we give people the flexibility to take as long as it takes to get stuff done. That is a classic thing that people will say when really what it means is if your estimate is wrong, you're going to have to be held to it regardless and burn yourself out. And that is an extremely unhealthy place to work for. Also, if you ask about vacation and they have an unlimited vacation policy, I've talked about this in other videos, that can be a problem. But basically, if you're asking them things like, well, what time do people go home, or again, let's say this is in person. So much work is remote today. What time do people sign off Slack? Or, are there usually, I think a great question is it usually expected for me to be able to respond to Slack after work hours? And see what they say. But, in general, if you're hearing really vague answers to, questions that you have about work-life balance, which, hey, this channel is called Healthy Software Developer. I'm trying to help you have a healthy work-life balance. That's a significant red flag that there's probably some cultural issues at that company. The second thing that is a really big red flag, the company you're about to join could be toxic, is when they make long hours a badge of honor. And what do I mean by that? I mean, well, actually, about 5 years ago, this is really cool. I had a person leave a comment on one of my videos. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was the one about why do so many programmers lose hope. But they left a comment when, if you've watched that video, a lot of the comments in it and a lot of the content in the video is about, burnout and things like that. But this person had worked with a career coach, not in software development, but just a general career coach. And one of the pieces of advice they gave them, and then this commenter gave me, and I thought was great, it'll help you, is, to ask someone when you're interviewing, as part of just whoever you talk to, tell me about somebody who was in my job role who did really well here. What did they do? And listen for rewarding firefighting and long hours. If they say things like, oh, Mary was the best. Yeah, she would just bend over backwards. And I mean, sometimes she'd even cancel stuff at home. She did whatever it took to make sure that we hit our deadlines. Whoa, that's not the type of company you want to join. They're actually encouraging and celebrating and rewarding people for overstepping their boundaries. I mean, part of the responsibility, I believe, of a tech company that's going to treat their employees well is they have, a set amount of hours that they're paying their employees for to do work, and they need to have a set of hours where they're not expecting their employees to be, available in any way. Otherwise, it's unhealthy. So the third red flag that you're about to join a potentially toxic tech company, there's a lot of them, but these are the common ones that I see, is a reward of a title or potentially salary in an offer that, or, perks that seem kind of out of balance for the position you're looking for. So for example, if you were a, senior developer and you start interviewing and they want to offer you a principal developer position or a software architect position, but you didn't actually market yourself as wanting that, they're just kind of offering it out of nowhere. Or, you're expecting, $140,000 a year or something like that. And they're offering you 185, 200. Now, again, there's plenty of markets where that's, an average or slightly above average amount of pay, depending again on the position. I work with people all over the world, so that can depend. But, the idea is to look for a combination of these red flags as ways to tell you if you're about to join a potentially toxic company. And I think a company that's offering things that seem way beyond what either you're qualified for or you were asking for, that can be a red flag that once you get in the door, it's not going to be the type of place that you want to stay for very long at all. Now, next, let's talk about why is it that we ignore the red flags in the first place? Well, one of the reasons is I think we tell ourselves, well, if it's for this much money, I can handle the stress. Basically, we probably know that if we get into a company and they're pushing us really hard, we're going to hate it. But we tell ourselves, and man, I've done this, so we'll just check yourself on this one. We tell ourselves, well, the reason why it's so stressful is they're not paying me enough. And if they were just paying me more, then, I could handle a lot more stress. But if this is one of the things you're telling yourself, just remember, if you join the company and it ends up being toxic or you get stressed out, unfortunately, not trying to be a jerk here, but I'm just being honest, and I've fallen for the same thing. In that case, you're the one to blame because you basically deceived yourself. And I think one of the reasons that we do this is we're so caught up in urgency around our career. So many people have convinced us on LinkedIn and on YouTube, that we need to retire when we're 38 or, just make $250,000 straight out of college. And so we're in this huge rush or hurry as though there's no money available and as though our career could just die any minute. And I have this career guide, I've mentioned it in other videos, that I try to help people not fall prey to that and actually look at their career as, a little bit more of a marathon versus a sprint, and to have a sustainable pace and look at okay, when I take a job and I make steps, where am I along my career trajectory? Do I really need to be racing? No, that's the short of it. But if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description. Grab the career guide. Another reason we can just completely ignore the red flags when they're right in front of our face is we tell ourselves, well, I can handle this for a while. It's just a stepping stone. So we convince ourselves that if we get into a toxic environment or we get into a high pressure environment, we aren't going to have to stay real long. And so we'll probably be able to put up with it because there's a fixed duration. Let me tell you why that's kind of a bad way to look at it. Well, you don't really know how bad it's going to be until you get into the job. And if you're already seeing signs it's going to be, there's a whole range from irritating to, untenable, where you can't even work there anymore and you can't stand, let's say, your boss or the culture or the hours. And so, I can see why, again, for a lot of money and some of the things I'm going to talk about here, we often convince ourselves to take the job anyway, but doing it, justifying to ourselves that it's a stepping stone, meaning, well, I really want to be at this better company, or I really want to get this other title, but I'll take this one, just to put up with it for a little while because I really need a job right now. Now, again, I know the market is difficult right now. I hope you hear me here. I'm not trying to trivialize. If you're in a situation where you're looking for a job and you're having a really hard time, and I know with the AI bots, spam applying people to LinkedIn, talk about that in future videos, how you can avoid that, that's a real problem. But, if you, let's say you're a developer and you want to work in product management and, you want to make a switch basically in your career. I mean, it could be any kind of switch. And you find a company and they're kind of telling you, hey, we've got an opening for someone that's a developer but wants to be a product manager. We don't have 100% product management work yet, but there's a tract that's available, or basically it sounds like that perfect stepping stone for you, but you're seeing all these other red flags. They're celebrating overwork. They've got toxic tech culture, the unrealistic expectations. If you start telling yourself that well, I have to do this as a stepping stone, again, if you get the job, and I hate to be the one to say this to you, and I'm not trying to beat you up, I'm just trying to help you, unfortunately, you have yourself at least a little bit to blame for putting yourself in that situation. And the last sign that we will sometimes ignore red flags, or basically justification we'll give ourselves, and this one I've also fallen prey to, it's kind of embarrassing to say, is we'll take a stressful job somehow thinking that we have to do it to prove our worth. Meaning, well, if I can't put up with difficult situations, what does that say about me? I mean, I should have some level of resilience. So, I can't not take a job just because it's going to be really hard or just because I'm seeing negative signs. I mean, I need to be able to put up with that. Now, I do actually believe that life is difficult and there's a lot of struggle involved, and we do need resilience and we need fortitude and we need strength to overcome, or at least push through, all the difficult things life throws at us. And so when I get into difficult situations, especially kind of in my mid-30s to now, I started looking more at them as opportunities to grow and get stronger. But there's a difference between finding yourself in a difficult project and making the best of it, and consciously tricking yourself, basically telling yourself subconsciously, I'm going to take this job because I need to prove to myself that I'm strong enough. I mean, when you know, again, that it's not a good job and you've seen red flags and you know that it's a problem, or you want to make a bunch of money. So if you want to have a healthy career and you want to grow, you don't have to throw yourself into crap projects just because you think somehow you got to learn to put up with them, or somehow you're being a martyr for your family, and well, I'm helping provide for my family if I just let this company railroad all over me, or I take another job that I know going in is a crappy job. You don't have to do that. So how can you overcome the temptation to take that toxic job when you tell yourself these things maybe a little bit, or they're dangling those carrots in front of you? Well, the first thing I think you can do is to make what I'd call a relational impact list. This is basically a list of who are all the people in your life that are going to be really probably pissed off at you if you get into a crappy job. Now, if you're living by yourself, that list may be very short, but there's one person on it no matter what: you. And so you have to think about, if I get into this job and this causes me to overeat because I'm, emotionally stressfully eating, or it causes me to not work out anymore and I get out of shape and I don't have any energy and I feel frustrated, or if it causes me to lash out at people in anger because I'm stressed out, or, any number of problems, that's going to affect your anxiety levels, your self-worth, your peace. And so, even if it's only affecting you, you got to be really taking a clear picture at this, a clear look at this, and making sure you're actually being honest with yourself. Like, if I'm ignoring all these red flags, this doesn't come at no cost. I think sometimes we just trick ourselves because, again, like the story I told you at the beginning, we're so convinced it sounds so good and it sounds exactly like what we wanted that even though, you know, we're seeing all these problems and these things, we're just willing to completely ignore them. And I think if you get as clear as you can about how is it going to mess up you and how's it going to mess up the people that care about you. Like in my case, I have 3 children, 2 of them still are living at home, and I have a wife. And if I take a job that's toxic, it's going to destroy my marriage. It almost did. I almost lost her. It's going to cause me to have no time for my children. When I do have time for them, it's going to be like, you know, I'm just kind of hanging out in the room. Yeah, whatever. Or I'm like on my phone because I'm so stressed and I have so many thoughts racing through my mind. I can't even just be present. I can't even hang out with them. I can't enjoy myself. The second way that you can overcome these things that we tell ourselves and not get yourself stuck into a toxic job is to really have courage and show some, you know, bravery, basically, to ask the tough questions in the interview. So many times I see people who, you know, complain about the company that they're working for, and I ask them what kind of questions they asked during the interview, and they just say, well, I just asked about, you know, money or work hours and things like that. You know, I think you need to be asking companies very straight questions that if they're dodging, that's a big red flag. You know, if you ask a company, hey, tell me how you guys estimate here. Like, have you ever had a project where a developer estimated something that was really important in the company, but then as they were working on it, they found out it was going to take like 4 times longer? Tell me how that went. What happened? How did people deal with that? If they look at you like, oh my God, well, that tells you all you need to know. What the hell are you doing taking that job? Do not work there. That's a super valuable question you can ask. Now, if they instead answer, wow, okay, I see why you're asking this. That's a really good question. Well, to be honest, we didn't deal with that super well. Now, we don't want to burn our developers out, right? We can't just make them work overtime, but we really had to hit that deadline. So we had to figure out, we had to cut some scope. We had to make sure, you know, the team helped a little bit more. You know, if they're being kind of balanced about it, because they're not just going to be like, oh, we just changed the deadline and we brought in 6 new developers and, you know, that developer, it was totally fine and nobody had any issues whatsoever. Okay, dream on. They're probably not going to say that. But if you give a more balanced answer where they're being forthcoming with you and they're maybe even being honest about some of the mistakes that the management maybe had made, that's actually a super healthy sign that you're about to join a company whose management knows software development and they're familiar with the stuff that you and I deal with. And so you're about to walk into a company that's never going to be perfect, but at least you know some of the people you've met there, they can tell you a real story about what it's like to work there and what the problems are. So I just want to encourage you again, and that's just one example of a question. Brave questions that you can ask that will reveal to you what's it really like to work there. What do they reward? How do they deal with stuff? If you don't ask those things, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to prevent yourself from just falling into a crappy job. The third thing you can do to avoid the temptation to just take a job anyway, even though you know it's probably got, you know, bad red flags or there's problems, is you need to make sure you avoid companies altogether that resist any kind of transparency. If they don't want you to know how well the company's done publicly, if let's say they're publicly traded, they're kind of trying to avoid questions. If you ask questions about like, how long has the team been together? What kind of turnover do you have here? And they're just like, oh, well, we can't really talk about that. What do you think they're going to talk about when you join the company? How open do you think they're going to be then? So if they won't even tell you during the interview, you know, that's all a sign. So, you know, again, this goes back to the previous question. If you ask about estimates, if you ask about how they reward people, if you ask, you know, what do you think Agile is here? You know, if you ask, hey, how often do people usually work here before they get a promotion on average? And they go, well, it really depends from person to person. No, I get it. Yeah, that it depends. But I mean, I'm sure you can give me some idea. No, you know, I really can't. I really don't know. I'd have to go back and look. I mean, well, could you go back and look? I mean, I'm about to join this company. You know, this sounds like a really good opportunity, but I want to know that like there's really opportunities for growth here. You know, if there aren't opportunities for growth, this probably isn't the right job. You got to be honest. You got to be upfront. The fourth thing you can do to avoid falling into a toxic job is listen to your gut. Trust your instincts. Man, there's been a few times in my career where I knew it was a bad company I was about to join, or I knew it was a bad project that I'd just been put on. And I got those butterflies in the stomach, or I got that sort of uneasy, foggy feeling on my head, or just there's a lot of different physiological things where your body will start to tell you, this is not the right situation. And I wouldn't listen. I would just kind of ignore it and be like, yeah, that's probably something else, or it would just feel so uncomfortable. I didn't want to sit in those feelings. I didn't want to have to admit to myself that, let's say again, you're interviewing and there's 8 interviews and you're on the 7th interview and you just saw the red flags. Now you've heard of the sunk cost fallacy. It's this idea, well, I can't get back the 7 interviews I already invested in. If I don't take the job, I've lost all this effort. Hey, you've lost it anyway if you know it's the wrong company. So, whatever you can do to really pay attention. I think people who I coach, one of the things I like to help them with a lot is to trust their instincts more. A lot of them are really emotionally intelligent people. They just don't they don't listen to their emotional intelligence enough. They use a lot of data, they use a lot of facts, a lot of information, but some things that were sitting right in front of them where they were actually experiencing things either in their relationship or their life or their day or just their body that were telling them that they were about to make a bad decision. They just justified to themselves, well, I don't have enough information. Hey, sometimes you got to make a decision based on your gut, and there's never good enough data. And taking a job should be one of the places where you really trust it. And the fifth thing you can do that'll help you not fall into taking a toxic job because it has the allure of money, prestige, being, the right stepping stone for you or whatever, is to write a catastrophic story about how bad it could go. Now, again, you might not write handwriting. Maybe you do this with Notepad, but this is similar to a lot of other writing activities that people do. If you look into the psychology behind this stuff can really have a big impact. But, if you're about to consider taking a job and you're starting to feel uncomfortable, you're not feeling in your gut that it's the right move. You've seen some red flags, but you feel a lot of pressure to take it and you feel yourself pulling closer and closer to it. Maybe you even wrote the relational impact list that I talked about, and you've looked at how it's negatively going to affect people if you take this job, and you are open to that it's probably not the right job, but you're feeling just so tempted to take it. Maybe again, it's a lot of money or it's a big title. Write a story about, just make it up, a fictional story. It can be a couple paragraphs. I got into the job, and when I first got there, here's what the manager said to me. And then I realized that the team was acting this way. And you can make it up, but make it real for yourself and make it as bad as you can. What is it really going to be like if I'm on another toxic project? Am I willing to ignore my gut, ignore the red flags, ignore the relational impact list, and ignore all these things because of that money or because of that prestige? Am I really ready to be at the company and be feeling and experiencing how messed up it is? Or can I hopefully have a reality check and go, no, I am freaking not going to do this? So have you ever been tempted to take a job that you knew was not the right job for more cash or more rewards or more prestige? If you fell for it, what happened? If you were able to resist it, what are some of the things you did that helped you? Leave me some comments. Until next time, thanks.